What up, though? I want to paint a quick picture. (2020), like most people in the world, was a very challenging time. I sat on my couch and I scrolled through Instagram and I felt and I heard and I understood that the world was shutting down. Matter of fact, I don't know if anybody got that Instagram post talking about, oh, the gas stations were gonna be closed, the grocery stores were gonna be closed. So I went to the grocery store and I just went in there with a cart and I just put everything in the basket. It was probably one of the most panicked moments in my life. And so when the world shut down, what I realized was that our economy as well was going to shut down. What solution might be put forth in order to make sure that we all essentially survived? So, like most business owners and people, we looked to see what the future might hold. And they came out with this amazing PPP lending program. I made a phone call for a couple of my businesses because I thought I had the right relationships in place. And when I submitted my forms for my first company, I got rejected. I submitted my form for the company again. That business got rejected. And I started thinking to myself, how strong really is that relationship? I thought to myself, what will my kids think about this business that seemingly was supposed to be successful to take care of their legacy? And where would it be in the future? But seeing as I went to the great University of Michigan, we always come up with a solution. So I made a phone call to a friend of mine, Lauren McCann, who worked at Stand Together. And I said, hey, Lauren, do we know anybody within the community that knows anything about this PPP lending program? She was like, hold on real quick, I can make a couple calls. So she called her friend, Ashley Bell, who she met through the Aspen Institute, that actually was the one that I found out was the one that drafted the PPP lending program. And so I called Ashley, right? And I talked to him on the phone. I said, Ashley, my companies got rejected. If my companies got rejected, I know that your companies got rejected. And your companies got rejected. And the relationships that we thought that we had were not relationships at all. They were just minor inconveniences. And so Ashley and I had a chat. I said, Ashley, I need you to find all these companies. I need you to find a way for us to figure this out. So I called my Michigan family. I had a friend who owned a bank. He said, Dhani, if you have a lot of companies, including your own, we will open up a portal and we will help you move companies through their PPP lending program. $100 million of PPP lending later, my company survived, and so many of those other companies that Ashley Bell also knew survived. And so Ashley and I sat back and we said, you know what? If this person has a bank and they were able to help these people with their relationships, maybe we too should buy a bank. Because that's what Michigan graduates do. And alas, we stand here today to talk about the value of that moment and the transformational and the transformative legacy that both Ashley and I want, and that what we were able to create through that bank and the transformational legacy of which Dr. Martin Luther King has left on us, so that we can continue to inspire those to take challenging moments in life and bring our communities together so that we can all be successful. And so, in our conversation today, I'd like to first introduce to you my friend and business partner, Ashley Bell.
I got to do the next introduction, that's right. Dhani has meant so much to me and a lot of people in this room, so I would be remiss if I didn't first say that I appreciate you exposing me to things that I didn't know. I didn't know what Summit was 2 years ago, until I met Dhani. And on this journey that I've been on of expanding the beloved community, this new generation of allyship, I've been on a journey. And many of you in this room I've met in some fantastic and amazing places over this 2-year run, because I believe in the next woman that I'm bringing out tonight to come on the stage with us. She's striking up the band again, just like her father did here in Detroit in that summer of '63. Summer of '63 was a year that changed American history. It wasn't done by one race of people or one group of people. It was done by the greatest coalition of friends that this country had ever seen. People who invested in each other, who believed that they would travel to places far and wide, from Selma, Alabama, to Detroit, to Chicago, to marches and sit-ins across the nation to compel a country to do better, to live up to its creed. And here we are, this next generation, back in Detroit. Back in an arena very similar to the arena that he gave the precursor to the I Have a Dream speech in June of '63. But this time, a woman is the king. I want to welcome to the stage the CEO of the Martin Luther King Jr. Center for Nonviolence, of Be Love, Inc., the inheritor of a legacy that changed the world and broke the back of Jim Crow. Ladies and gentlemen, the youngest daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., Bernice A. King.
Take those monies and spread across families. My sister had.
I feel like that song needs to keep playing for just a little bit. That's like one of my favorite songs. Dr. King, how does it feel to be in Detroit this month in June on this stage together with all of us here at Summit?
It feels really powerful to be here 62 years almost to the date of my father being here. And you know, his work was about not just making the world a better place, but making us better people. Because we can do some things and it can improve the world, but we got to improve too. And so I'm excited to be here with everybody in this room. We're taking the journey to make this world all it can be for everybody to come into their full potential so that they can be the best people they can be too. When I was growing up, my mom used to tell us, you don't have to be your dad, you don't have to be me, but whatever you do in this world, be your best self. And so I'm glad to be here. Just the irony of it all and what we're really trying to do as a community in impacting this world, because that's what it's about. I wear these jackets that say impact over fame. I come from a famous family, but it's not about the fame, it's about the impact on people's lives and on our world.
And the irony of it all is because the fact that the I Have a Dream speech was first here.
In Detroit.
Right in Detroit. And
well, I would say it was actually in North or South Carolina, but the first large audience was right here in Detroit, where he was kind of, I say, teasing it a little bit.
125,000 people.
Yes.
It was teased towards.
Yes. And then moved to 250,000 in D.C.
But the thing that was interesting, you know, I read through, again, the I Have a Dream speech just in preparation of today, and you and your family were mentioned.
Yeah, my siblings.
Your siblings were all mentioned in the speech. And, you know, if you read, I have a dream that my 4 little kids will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. So when you hear those words from your father and know that he was thinking about you, how close or how far away do you think we are in that dream?
That's an interesting question, because to me, it's a matter of an awakening, you know, to the dignity of every human being in this world. And sometimes we're right there on the precipice, and then other times we're just kind of standing still. So I think we've made some progress. Obviously, we're here in Detroit, and if I just can be frank with you, we all black, audience here is majority white. That says something. Our world has moved, but we haven't moved enough, you know, and especially now with the climate and, you know, things that have taken place to push things out of the way in terms of the progress we've made. And, you know, it's really not about the DEI. It's really about understanding value of people and understanding the narrative and wanting the best, going back to that same word. And when you're honest about the disparities that exist in this world and you really analyze and look at it, consider the data, we got a lot of work to do to overcome the gaps, you know? So we got to figure it out, because it's going to be a point of tension forever if we don't figure it out. As Daddy said, if we don't learn to live together as brothers, and he meant sisters too, then we're going to be forced to perish together as fools. So we're a long way off, but let me straighten one thing out. He was not talking about a colorblind world. He didn't want you to dismiss, you know, who I am and my culture and what all that represented. He just didn't want that being used in a negative way. So even as we move forward, we're still going to recognize the various cultures and races, etc. But then we're not using that as a measuring point, as, you know, something negative to use against you, or even something positive, but just a recognition and a respect for that. So, yeah, we still have we have a lot of work to still do.
Well, someone that's doing a lot of work is Ashley Bell, and he's been doing that work for a long time. Ashley, as you think about your own family's history and its legacy, you know, I'd be curious how you see that word and how you remember Dr. King and what he told you when you first read the I Have a Dream speech.
You know, Don, I give you credit. There's parts of all of our family's history can be traumatic, and sometimes we don't even talk about it. And you've encouraged me to tell more of my family's story because of that, and you always do that. And that's actually been freeing for me, especially in our journey of creating this bank. For those, you know, when you talk about African-American-owned banks in America, the night that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, there were 146 black-owned banks in America. Today, there's 18. We live in a world where these banks are disappearing, and so the opportunity with them. And with my own family that was from Georgia, in 1934, my family started a black-owned bank in South Georgia for the sole purpose of giving loans to former slaves to buy back the plantations that they were slaves on, to try out this great American experiment of free markets. And I say this because I think it's important when we talk about this capitalism idea that the journey for Black Americans, what the height of what Dr. King was saying in the 60s was speaking of this journey of going from being capital, meaning that the people on this stage have ancestors that were put on somebody's tax forms 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, meaning they were assets. Men and women listed on schedules on tax returns that women in particularly, as they got older, were a depreciating asset. Think of that. That generally speaking, you could look at someone's taxes and see a woman who was 60 years old being taxed more than an ox in the field. And you end slavery and you tell those people that were capital that now it's time for you to become capitalists. With what? Up against all things. So my family created a bank in 1936 to make sure that we could finance those same sharecroppers to own the land, and they did. And that worked until 1970s. And you know what? I wasn't around in that time, but for people to tell me Jimmy Carter was having a hard time in 76, that's all I knew. But what I did know is the story that our bank was doing fine, but the government put pressure on all these Black banks in America because they didn't want to see what was happening. People, we believe in a world, in a room full of great people, that everybody's good. Well, some people just aren't. And institutions are just people. And so they forced our bank to be sold at auction on the courthouse steps in Dooley County, Georgia, on the exact same courthouse steps that my great-great-grandfather Mitchell was bought. And our bank was bought up in a roll-up that became PNC Bank. And so here we are, all these years later, looking for redemption. And that's the bank that we created.
It took Ashley about 1.5 years to tell me that story. 1.5 years. And him and I had done our work through COVID, and I never even knew about that. And so when I think about meeting people and how much history is behind those eyes, and how much legacy is behind the past, we always have to be mindful of that, because we may not necessarily know where people are essentially coming from, and the weight that might be carried. And I'd imagine throughout your life, you had always actually been thinking about that. You had always been remembering that moment. I know that you're an avid reader, an avid storyteller, an intellectual, if you will. And how, through your life, have you processed that moment that when you were told about that bank being sold on the same steps that your family member was sold?
You know, you bury it and you use it for fire in this furnace that's inside. I've always known that, because I had I'm fortunate. I'm a Black man that grew up in America that had the same Black man in my house from the day I was born, still to this day. So I'm fortunate. I know that. I had a strong presence, but I also know that by having parents that lived through Jim Crow. My mom and dad went to HBCUs because they didn't think it was cool. It was the only thing legal for them to do. They didn't go to HBCUs because they wanted to just have a good time. They went to Fort Valley State University, and my mother was valedictorian at Fort Valley State University when her father gave the graduation speech. we come from an area in the Deep South where this was just a part of life, but also was a part of life. Growing up in Atlanta, that's the cradle of the civil rights movement for a reason. The essence of justice and pursuing a better world is in the DNA of just about everybody who wakes up every day wanting to make this world better. So how I channeled it, Dhani, to be honest with you, is to never give up, to always be hopeful. And that's what made me walk out the doors of being a partner at the largest law firm in the world to join with Dr. King to create enterprises to make this world better. It was worth it.
And so the cradle of civil rights moved and inspired and allowed you to continue your efforts towards growth, and you used that to propel you. Dr. King, how did you think about the weight of carrying the King name? And how did you think about your life's impact and how your father, looking down upon you every day, might be moved by the things that you do?
So, honestly, I was trying to run away from all of this. I spent probably 20 years once I became, legal, because when you're in your mom's house, you have to do what your parents say. So the weight was, it wasn't as challenging because of that. I was tired of people having these expectations of me. For some reason, when a king shows up, meaning one of us, it's like people are still longing for Dr. King. I'm like, I'm Bernice. So I spent time trying to discover Bernice first and foremost, so that now the weight is not as heavy. Doesn't mean it's not difficult, challenging, but the beauty is I had a mom, and I always talk about her because my dad gets so much accolades, but the reality is it was my mom who prepared this pathway for the iconic king, because he was not an icon when he was assassinated. They had done a whole study and that indicated he was one of the most hated persons in America shortly before he was assassinated. And now you fast forward 2025, he's one of the most beloved persons in the world. And some people would argue it's because he's not with us, and so he's not, his presence is not threatening today. But I would argue it's because Coretta Scott King, who was side by side with him in the movement, who was an activist herself before they met, who was his equal, who really was probably his number one advisor, is the reason. I mean, she dedicated her whole life to creating the institution that I lead, the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolent Social Change, known as the King Center, and then moving towards the holiday. But in the house, she invoked him a lot. So I had to wrestle with all this. Who is this man? Because I was 5 when he was assassinated. I didn't get a chance to really know him. So I had to learn Martin Luther King first before I really knew Daddy. And she invoked him so much. But one of the things that stuck with me through time is she would say to us, somebody has to cut off the chain of violence. And so when I think about the work of my father, his greatest gift to us is this whole nonviolent philosophy and methodology that extends past social justice movement. He really taught it, embodied it as a way of life. He wasn't just doing that in the streets. It's how he engaged people just day to day in the work that he did. He had this whole way of thinking and speaking and engaging that came from a higher place of consciousness. Or as he would say in the I Have a Dream speech, as they went forward in the movement, forever conduct your struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. So he operated from this high plane of dignity and discipline in everything he did. He didn't want to see people destroyed just because they were destroying. So that's what my mother said, you got to disrupt that. And I think we're in a time now where you got to be disruptors, you know, of the chain of violence that's occurring, not just physically. You know, we're doing things, you know, with our tongues. We're creating things sometimes that we're not thinking about its damaging effect. And we can do things in this world that everybody has an opportunity to be their absolute best. And I think Dr. King taught us that way. So for me, it really is thinking along those lines, carrying that legacy forward, being that disruptor of the chain, you know, of violence. And, you know, it's violent when people can't have an opportunity to own a home, you know, and they're locked out. Like in Atlanta, I was talking to somebody earlier, the difference in here and in Atlanta, you know, a lot of corporations have bought up the homes in Atlanta. And so the rent is, you know, they jack up the rent, and it's not as many, there's not as many homes available. So now we have to create all of this. And it never should have happened because people should have been in the frame of reference of saying, okay, how do we balance this thing out? As Ashley, you say it so well, you can do well and still do good. We can legislate the same way. And we must do business that way because we gotta disrupt this chain of violence that continues to spiral down and create a lot of what do you call it? Pain and suffering unnecessarily for so many people.
They always say that behind every great man is an even better woman.
And I would turn that around and say, beside, come on, women, beside every great man. We still got your back, though.
And the fact that they lived together for so long, they didn't live in, but at the same time, they didn't live in isolation. Right? And when we think about legacy, oftentimes, it's not really brought to the front. It's oftentimes sort of put to the side. But now as we move forward through our collective and our community, through collaboration, it's an important piece to that puzzle because that word means so much. Ashley, you live in Atlanta. You know, I was listening to Dr. King and her challenge towards the city and its issues. I know you've worked quite a bit within the city. How have some of your efforts moved forward and changed the dynamic of Atlanta so that you could be at the forefront in order to bring us together alongside with your journey?
And this part is very, you know, I learned a lot from Dr. King's life, like a lot of us. And to really answer your earlier question, one of his most powerful quotes for me when you asked me how all of us can take such trauma, especially based on discrimination against our ancestors, and not feel hatred or vindictiveness, is you got to look to Dr. King's quote when he said, "Hate is too heavy a burden to bear. I choose love." And choosing love every day and in every way, it is a discipline. And the one thing about Atlanta, and we always like to say this in Atlanta, it's like the city's motto now, Atlanta influences everything. But the reality is that some of the greatest stories that you heard about how Dr. King systematically broke down this era of Jim Crow, very few of those stories are in Atlanta.
That's right.
He left. It was this blueprint of leave Atlanta, go to Albany, go to Selma, Montgomery, all these other places. Now, Atlanta had its own issues, but the fight was always very strategic. And so when we think about what's strategic, it takes having allies. When I think of the work that's been the most impactful for me in my life, and the greatest things I've been able to do, to be honest with you, is outside of my family, it is friendship. I wouldn't be on this stage if it wasn't for Dhani, you accepting me as a friend. The baseline of my relationship with Dr. King is a friendship. You can't have friendship without trust and love. When you walk out on faith and you try to do something that's never been done before, the world will teach you first why it's never been done before. And you will answer that question with the reason it's never been done before is because the wrong people were trying to do it. So we've been on this journey to find the right people, which is why we come to places like Summit. Because I know that in this crowd is the next generation of the exact same people that were sitting here in 1963 listening to her father speak. You showed up just like they showed up. Because you wanted to hear about how can we make this world better? What is the future of humanity? What can love really accomplish? And you're seeing it. Walls are being broken down. Barriers are being removed only through the power of love. Now, Dr. King's strategy was that nonviolence was the only way. Because at the end of the day, it was the hate that people felt in their heart that was a burden on them that they couldn't carry, that they had to give up. And so when you talk about this nonviolence, is whether it's in the financial sector or through climate or through affordable housing, that is actual violence, as Dr. King said. That is an institutional hatred that we have allowed to exist far too long. How do you change that? Institutionalizing love. And what are institutions? People. You have to carry that with you when you leave here today, back to the boardrooms, back to the places you came from, and bring that Kingian way of worldview and love to every place you go with that discipline.
So if people are institutions and they need to sort of adjust their aperture towards love, what is different about the human element in 2025, in your opinion?
Well, we're honestly, we are still too segregated. All the right people exist to fix every problem we have. The question is, can we get all the right people in the right place with the right mindset? Dr. King traveled from Atlanta to join you today because she believes some of those people are in this room. This wasn't, we just sent an invitation to show up because it was an open space on the calendar. When Jody and Dhani and everybody said, this is an opportunity, this is the last summit, then this is where we needed to be. This is an invitation. There's a movement that is happening in this country to push back on everything that is erasing the gains that her father gave his life for. And we can't see a resurgence of love and opportunity for everybody unless we are willing to do what her father and his friends did on the apex of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They locked arms. If you look at some of those pictures, they had leis of love around their necks, brought from indigenous from Hawaii. We offer you that same lei of love, to join us on that bridge. To know that on the other side might not be the best of circumstances, but together with friendship based on love and trust, it can be overcome. We are worthy of this moment. Every one of us is a descendant of a legacy that we wouldn't be here if somebody hadn't sacrificed for us. Those pictures of the 1960s should not just be historical relics, they should be inspirations that you need to be in the next photo. Let history capture you in this moment, doing exactly what they did, loving and leading with light and being willing to sacrifice just enough to pay the price for freedom.
I gotta say something. I just gotta say something, because What he just said is so important to the way forward. You know, those people made a decision in a moment, starting in 1955 in Montgomery when they did the bus boycott. They had to decide, are we willing to make whatever the sacrifice that we need to make to see this through, to break the very backbone of bus segregation, being treated in a way that was not with dignity, you know, paying your 5, whatever cents it was, paying your bus fare and having to get off, but the white citizens could get on and go on and sit, find their seat. Get off only to go to a back door, and sometimes they pull off on you. And so in that moment, it wasn't about them. Or should I say it may have been, but it wasn't just about them, you know? And so they made that sacrifice. And when I look at the years in between then and now, I don't see that same thing. And I think that's why we keep going around in a circle, because everyone is kind of just trying to hold their own. And it's when we really let go and we trust that the God of the universe is with us. That's one of the principles of nonviolence, that God is with us, that the universe is on the side of justice, and God is too. When we let go and have trust in that, it gives us what we need to trust each other, you know? And for my dad, it was about being with the people. You know, when we talk about Martin Luther King, I never talk about him in isolation when I'm talking. There are hundreds of people who made just the same sacrifice that he did. He was the one of the few who lost their life, but he got amongst them, so he was able to develop a trust in them for his leadership, because he said, we're in this together. You know, he was well educated. He could have been doing anything else. You know, he came from a middle-class family. But he said, no, we're impacted, even if not everybody directly. As he said, we're caught in this inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny, and what affects one directly affects all indirectly, and I can't be all that I ought to be until you're all that you ought to be. When we understand that and we live that, we can build the kind of community we need in connection, because nothing great happens in isolation. I mean, you gotta connect. And, you know, he was a great connector. When they wrote that letter from the Birmingham jail, I'm sure many of you have heard that letter, he was in isolation, being accused of being an outside agitator. And he had to straighten them out and say, look, I can't be an outside agitator anywhere in this world, in this earth. You know, from a spiritual perspective for him, because he was a Christian, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. But also, he said, because injustice is here. And that injustice threatens justice everywhere. So injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And then he went on to say, look, I'm not just here as an outside agitator. I got some homies. I got some folks I'm working with. They're associated with us. You know, they're aligned with us. You know, they are part of the SCLC. They invited me here to join and connect in their struggle, you know, and so they were struggling over there. They knew of what he was doing, so they all connected, and they supported each other in their various, you know, cities and efforts to dismantle de jure segregation. And how dare we let their sacrifice be for naught? What's happening right now is almost like a slap in their face. So we have to think about that. So it's time for us to sacrifice in this generation.
They always say,
that didn't get a lot of claps.
oh, they're coming. I knew it was coming. And I'm reminded of several different talks that my coaches always gave me And they always talked about it's not about you, it's about something greater than yourself.
Exactly.
And I think many of the discussions that we've had at the Summit stage, whether it be here at the Opera House or the Hudson Building, have all spoken to that. Innovation comes not from one, but it comes from many. It comes from the collaboration of those that are willing to work together. And so I just have to ask the question because, Ashley and I were talking about our first discussion when I called you when you were still in the White House, and we were talking about the PPP lending program and getting an opportunity to get people on the phone to learn about this new portal that had just been opened. Dr. King, I didn't realize that you were on the phone too. What from that day and that time when we had that chat got you thinking, maybe I should hang out with these two fellows? What got you thinking to yourself, maybe this cycle should be broken?
Well, let me set the stage on this a little bit for her, because that moment probably means way more to me than any of it. For those that, you always have that one moment when people ask me, like, where did it start with Dr. King and you and all these things? For me, it was then. The world was on fire. We created the payroll protection program to save a generation of entrepreneurs. But the problem was women and minority-owned entrepreneurs in marginalized communities did not have access to banks that were willing to give them the money that they were entitled to get. You had people thinking that Cash App was their bank, or Venmo was their bank, because they're out here creating point-of-sale businesses, and they didn't know that that's not their bank. And you had money being scooped up by the billions by big banks for select customers. And so literally you had all these entrepreneurs across the world freaking out. And so at the time, I was working in the White House, and I was probably the only person everybody knew of color that was there, fortunately. And people found me, and they were like, we got to figure out what to do. And there was a strange law that I found out that because I was at the White House, that we could technically call everybody's phone as a national emergency and get them on a phone call to give them public information. Didn't know we could do this, but I was like, okay, figure this out. We should do this. And so, I'm trying to figure out how to reach all my people. And I told Dhani, we're going to do a phone call with 100,000 people on it. Sounds like a lot. I know you've been on some bad phone calls before. This one wasn't that bad. And I was like, how do we do it? So I called, I was like, we started off in the Southeast. So I was like, let's call T.I. Maybe T.I. can, join in. So T.I., this rapper, I don't know if y'all know T.I., but he's real. So T.I. agreed to help me with this phone call. And so what I was going to do is we had it's the government. We got everybody's information. We literally called, we called every entrepreneur that was a woman and African American, whatever, in the entire region, in some other places across the South and in other places. And so people were literally walking in the grocery store, and their phone would ring, and it'd be a 202 number, whatever they pick up, and it would be like, hey, this is T.I., the King of the South. You need to get on this PPP call, because I'm trying to help you get this money. And for those entrepreneurs, that made sense, right? I was like, okay, T.I.'s calling me, so it's got to be legit, because it's Tip. And so literally, the call starts. John Hope Bryant was my MC, and I'm on the call. And I called Dhani. I was like, you need to speak on this call because we're trying to get out the money from his bank. And literally, the call started with about 5,000 people kind of just checking it out. And then it became like a social media thing where people were like, did y'all get a call from T.I.? And it's like people posting online. And at the apex, we were at 160,000 people were on this massive phone call. And I'm literally in the basement of the White House, and nobody knows I'm doing this. And so so I'm down there making this call happen, and it lasted 4 hours. But the people that spoke, Dhani included, nobody wanted to get off the phone because it was the one positive place they could find for hope. So it kept growing. People kept telling each other. And at the end of this 4-hour phone call is for me when this started. Dr. King apparently was listening, and she wasn't even a speaker. Just think about this. I didn't even ask her to speak. She was just listening. I guess somebody gave her the number. She saw it. I don't know. T.I. probably told her, text her. And she texted me at the end of the phone call. And no, they both, this is how God works, in my opinion. They both text me at the exact same time. They didn't even know each other yet. Dhani texted me and was just like, wow, I've never been on anything like that in my life. And at the same time, Dr. King texted me, May 20th, 2020 at 8:05 p.m. Great call. My dad would be proud. And my response to her is what I hope you have as a response to what you're hearing today. I thanked her for the comment, but I said, I know your burden is heavy. If I can do anything to help carry a little bit of that to make this world better, I'll do my best. Here we are 5 years later, looking for people to help carry this load. An invitation to carry the light of the world into the darkest of places. To be able to sit down as brothers and sisters and say, the next business we start will have a heart-centered focus. The next tech that I build will make sure that it makes the world better and won't further marginalize people. Every idea that comes out of beautiful places like this, we have an opportunity to make this world better, to help carry that burden, not for her, but for us all. Because I realized at some point it wasn't her burden, it was actually mine. It is actually yours. It is actually everyone in this room's burden. But we can live together, and we can live with love.
So, Dr. King, you just joined us because of T.I. Is that what that's?
Got it.
How did you find out about that? I never asked you. I don't know how you found out about it.
I don't even remember. It probably was. Or somebody else said they're getting on this call, that T.I. did call.
But what about what we're doing excites you? What about what we're doing allows you to see that chain being broken? And why now for you?
You want me to talk about what we're doing, or why?
No. I'd like to know.
It's
I'd like to
hard
know.
to do it
No,
without-
coming from this moment, right? It's 2020. Now, now we're at 2025, and as we've gone through the evolution of building this bank platform and the tremendous efforts that Ashley has put in and so many other people, I mean, there was
Because
that. There was
I
that
think
ask.
I think it's the next. It's a continuation of a phase that my dad was in. You know, I was telling the group just a bit ago, most people, when they think about Martin Luther King Jr., they think about, I have a dream. And they think about, race relations. But they don't know that Dr. King was doing a lot of work on the economic front, too. He was making a difference in the lives of so many, we use the word marginalized, communities. He was making sure that there could be income and wealth in the black community, and doing it, yes, holding corporations accountable to make sure that they were hiring blacks, not just at the low-level jobs, but, at higher levels, and also promoting from in. The other thing is they were requiring that some of these businesses invest in banks, black banks, if there were those that existed in the cities where they were doing business. They were creating housing opportunities for the black community. And so when Ashley came to me and we were talking about what he's doing, I said, I want to be a part of it because it's continuing my dad's work in a whole different way. Fortunately, I had some roots as well with a bank. I think it's the second oldest. It's the only.
It is.
Is it the only one still around from way back then? Or are there two of them?
Just one or two.
Are you sure Citizens is not the oldest of the still surviving?
It's one or two.
Okay, it's one or two. Citizens Trust Bank in Atlanta. My grandfather was a part of the initial group of people on the board. And so when he died, he passed us stock, and I'm thinking, God, I'm an owner already of a bank in a small way. And my father talked about the night before he was assassinated, having a bank in, telling the black community, take your money out of these banks and put them in these banks. You know, because at that time we needed the support because we weren't getting what we needed to build up our community.
Even now.
Yeah,
Just to elaborate, that banking comment that he made, here's the reality, and I leave you with this challenge. There's nobody in this room that doesn't have a bank in their wallet or their purse on their phone. But do you know if the bank that you're banking with is aligned with your values? Mm-hmm. Far too many of us believe that banks are just banks.
Right.
So we don't even think about it. But what I can tell you, you can go to the Department of Justice website and look at the very laws that our Congress has passed that we as a people have empowered them to do and see that most of the banks in your wallets and your purses have consent decrees and have been fined by the Department of Justice for not loaning money to women and minorities across this country. While they still run commercials on TV, on your timeline, the movement for us is to give you an alternative to banking with a place that may not be aligned with your values. You don't got to bank with us, but you need to bank somewhere that's creating the world that you want to see. And so the option is this. Go look up your bank. Go check Department of Justice website. You may see it, you may not. But here's the reality. You can't leave here now not knowing that there is something to do. You can't ignore that you know now that you could be undergirding a system that is discriminatory against people who, you know what, you may never meet, but you have the power to help. We renamed this bank Redemption because there has to be a redemptive moment in this country where we can reclaim the lands of the people who are living in these communities, who are renting in these communities, who give everything to these neighborhoods, and we can't give them the dignity to own the home that they're in. Last stat. We got 3 organizations that determine who gets credit in this country. I won't name them by name, but you know who they are. These 3 credit organizations, on their own algorithm, and all our tech people in here, we know this is all, there's no algorithm that wasn't created by people, say that 56% of African Americans should not be trusted to own a home. All 3. Now, you and I can't sit here and believe that a half of a whole race of people, of any people, should be told they shouldn't have the dignity to own their own home. Because that same logic, if we accept that same logic meets you when you pulled over on the side of the road. That same logic meets a small black girl in a classroom with a teacher who adopts this majority is wrong logic. How do you fight back? Smart people in 1963 and in 2025 fight back with their money. We broke the back of Jim Crow because we decided to only shop and support people who were aligned with us. And if the businesses that we had back then weren't supporting us, we wouldn't shop there. But guess what? The power that we have now in a room full of tech entrepreneurs and big philanthropists and people in private wealth, we don't have to just not shop there. We can create the businesses that we want to deliver the services that we need, to create the world that we want to be in. That is what Summit is about. That is what you are here for, and that's why we showed up to be a part of that next generation of entrepreneurship.
So give everybody a sense of how the bank will be structured, some of the things that we're moving towards with regards to technology, and how that will overall impact the community.
I'm gonna do it quickly. I'm gonna share this idea that we talked about because I think it's important because Summit, just where you come, you talk about things that are novel, right? So we bought, we're the first black people in America to ever buy a white bank, first off. It's never happens, ever. And we bought it on purpose in the whitest place possible. And Salt Lake City.
Okay. I just want to make sure
we're
on the same page.
I mean, look, where banks are located is just like where houses are located. Crime's different, policing is different in different neighborhoods. We moved out of a low to moderate income area to the 5th wealthiest zip code in America, and the police are different. They treat you differently. Banks have police, and how those police treat you determine everything that you do. But imagine the world. This is a small bank. We bought a small bank in Utah for this purpose. We're going to grow it to be it is already day one, the most sound black bank in America, but we can't grow it without your help and your support. It's called Redemption. You're hearing this first. This bank actually starts 12:01 a.m. Tuesday. So you're hearing it first. This isn't a thing. You get to hear it first. We make history Tuesday. What we're building with people who are affiliated with Summit and others, imagine a world if you had a credit card, right? Imagine a world if people in this room had a credit card that could tell you every place you shopped how it was impacting the world. Whether it was climate change, whether it's humanitarian issues or discriminatory issues. You can take that in the negative or you can flip that into the positive. Imagine a world where it told you that you were shopping at a place that was the best when it came to the environment, the best when it came to equal pay for women, the best when it came to understanding how their supply chain was affecting civil rights and human rights. And imagine if the APR, the interest rate on that credit card, would go up if you shop somewhere that was against your values and would take that extra interest rate and give it to a nonprofit to offset the harm you just did. And the interest rate would go down if you shop somewhere that was making the world better. This is the power of capitalism. This is the power. If we do this the right way, we can change the world. Imagine a world where everybody had access to have a card like that. We could be in one giant movement together every day that we shopped. And we would all be together at that apex of that bridge, that Edmund Pettus, locked in arms, using the power that we've been given, the talent and the opportunity we've been given, the treasure that we've been getting to make the world better.
That's it.
You know, one of the places that has taught me a lot, and I've been fortunate enough to be in a lot of amazing rooms, is the Aspen Institute. And it taught me to think not just domestically, but also taught me to think globally through our civil society. And Ashley and I have spent a lot of time there. I wonder, when we think about Redemption Holdings, as we've built this, and we are going to continue to build this domestically, how this goes global, and how the engagement of entrepreneurs and others alike, in the same way that you just spoke to so eloquently, Ashley, can be a part of that journey, not only through their deposits, but also through their thinking.
This is a partnership with the King Center. So I'm going to say it this way. If you have heard Dr. King speak, here other places, the King Center is ground zero for her father and her family's legacy. So if you're a part of organizations that are looking to support philanthropic work that is doing the heavy lifting, the King Center is important. What she talked about creating a world with better leaders, isn't going to happen on its own. So what we're doing, and you, again, the first to be able to hear this, we'll be in San Francisco in July with the first capital raise on this. Raise your hand if you've heard the Aspen Institute. Okay, cool, this works. The Aspen Institute is partnering with the King Center to create a new fellowship. For the first time, you will be able to have Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King Fellows at Aspen. This can't happen the way it needs to happen without people like you. Imagine a world, and Dhani and our Aspen Fellows, every Aspen Fellowship, Henry Crown and others, when they finish their fellowship, they have to create a venture. A venture is a business, it could be a philanthropic effort, it could be many different things, but it has to be in line with what they learned from their fellowship. There's 20 to 30 people in every class. Imagine a world where every year, from around the world, not just US, globally speaking, you're talking the best tech entrepreneurs from New Delhi to Silicon Valley, policymakers from London to South Africa, teachers, everyone from all these different industries the best of the best of heart, being selected to be MLK and CSK fellows at Aspen, together going through a 2-year-long process, studying the world from a Kingian worldview, seeing the world as King saw it, as Coretta Scott King saw it, through love, through sacrifice. And at the end of that fellowship, you had 20 people creating new ventures to make the world better every year, funded by venture capital. Think about the gift that that could be when we talk about the King legacy living on. This gives everyone in all these industries a chance to be King Fellows, to be funded by private capital, and bring in the best and brightest ideas to turn the tide on what we're seeing and bring in a new generation of hope through entrepreneurship, through giving, and through philanthropy.
So as we come to a close, Dr. King, I keep replaying and thinking about our discussion and some of the amazing words that you've spoken and some of the amazing quotes that you've recited, and so many different moments from your readings with Dr. Martin Luther King and what you've invoked. What would you leave us with, if you will, when we think about the notion of legacy and what we all must do and what we all must continue to do through our own personal work, both here in Detroit and beyond?
So I'm on this journey right now to disprove something that my father said. Most of the things he said I agree with, but this one has really puzzled me. He said that one of the tragedies still of human history, and I want you to think, my father's been gone 57 years, and he probably said this about 59 years ago. One of the tragedies still of human history is that the children of darkness are often more zealous and determined than the children of light. And I've traveled around the world because it's puzzled me that it always appears that dark people working in the dark, doing things that are dark, seem to be more prevalent than the children of light, meaning we're still talking about these troublesome issues in our world. And so I think the key is to package all of this that you have been doing for, 17 years now, and really think about what is that group project that needs to take place now that lives past a moment, that lives forward as light, in greater light in our world. He, in his book, Where Do We Go From Your Chaos, a Community, that was published in 1967, he left us with a challenge. He said, the nettlesome task is to organize our strengths into compelling power so that, at that time, he said, the government cannot elude our demands. And I would say so that these structures and systems, power structures and systems, cannot elude our demands. And I would say even more, so that whatever systems and struggles that are in place cannot deny us our humanity. And so that's what I would lead to everybody, that we turn the tide on the zealousness and determination of the children of darkness, so that we can say that one of the great aspects of humanity is that the children of light are always more zealous and determined than the children of the darkness.
Amen.
Because they have connected.
Amen.
And they have worked towards, that beloved community.
So from our entire summit community and those that are in the audience here today and those that might be elsewhere, we just wanted to say a collective thank you, Ashley Bell, for being here. And please, everybody, give a rousing round of applause to Dr. Bernice A. King.